Good morning, y'all. I'm back by the grace of God. Uh, here we go. This morning, I'm gonna be talking about how to beat these people at their own game. They're talking about the AI regime that would be capable of making all the important decisions for humanity by way of central planning. They would also use technology to keep those countries that are enemies of America in internal strife so as to control them as well. They will be able to control the population of America and world by reconfiguring the human brain, and by default, that will be able to reconfigure societies. This is a tool the world elite has long sought after, and how now finally it is within their grasp. However, there are methods one can employ to fight back against this new technology. Number one, multitasking. Learn how to multitask, as multitasking causes you to think in multiple threads. When you're constantly thinking in multiple threads, then there's no coherent pattern for the perps to establish and integrate into remote neural monitoring data. In other words, integration completion between the remote neural monitor system and your brain is hindered, and without your response to that specific impulse injection, the remote neural monitor verification process breaks apart. The perps are using fabricated or falsified streams to interfere with your memory and your thought processes. Once you become dependent, you believe their impulse injections are your own and on the system's output, or they believe your responses to it are consistent. And they will be able to fabricate subconscious responses, which they will then pretend are indicators of honesty and dishonesty, positive recognition, anxiety, etc. They will use their own impulse injections to convince you that the fabricated responses are your own. If you're unaware of this constant mental manipulation, the system will begin to shape your thoughts and behavior. They will use this to restrict your thought and behavior by blocking, interfering with your memory and thought processes. While these suggestions, injected impulses are being provided, the interference is triggered and can be activated at will by attackers. Again, you can defeat the remote neural monitoring attacks by constantly multitasking. Think about multiple things at once, and by ignoring random encounters with strangers you don't know, as such, in which the remote neural monitor system can remotely measure. Then you can not only see through the system's attempts to manipulate you, but you also manage their ability to evaluate your responses by controlling the verification process, by working through the remote neural memory blocks and counter the system's ability to influence your choices. It will begin to feel as though you are thinking in through two threads. Just learn how to multitask. Spontaneity. Never follow a set pattern of conduct. Always change your behavior every day at moment's notice. Do this when you're quickly, not slowly, on the move, as it is more difficult for the remote neural monitor system to monitor your thoughts while you're in rapid motion. If you decide to go to the grocery store, to go to the convenience store instead. Change it up every day, but don't do the same things over and over, as that establishes a pattern of conduct. Remember, they are trying to alter your daily motives and emotional perceptions. The remote neural monitor system is designed to provoke you emotionally so that they can generate response statistics, which the system will use to determine how to interpret and link descriptions with data captured about your memory references. This is why they are constantly trying to keep you talking, or constantly stopping you and asking for directions, etc. So always ignore prolonged random encounters with people you don't know. You're not being rude, just refusing to allow them to manipulate you. Once they have consistent statistics, the system will use previous choice references and inject them into your subconscious thoughts during normal activity, which is also referred to as impulse injections, to convince you that the response was your own and influence you to complete or describe the reference by making the appropriate verbalizing or performing a related action, which is known as verification. You can fight or control this if you learn to defeat these memory attacks by learning to read active memory. Once they see what you respond to emotionally or intellectually, they will fabricate controversial or situational scenarios, street theater, based on events or topics they know will capture your attention. For example, if you're a football fan, they will talk about your favorite team, or will wear a t-shirt or hat with your favorite football team's emblem. They do this with me a lot as well. I'm an Alabama fan, so they constantly wear Alabama shirts and hats pretending to be Alabama fan from Alabama in order to try and stimulate me toward talking with them and keep me talking to them. This is why the perps try to keep you talking for so long, not just to aggravate you, but to provoke you into an emotional response so they can map your thought process in order to subsequently inject impulses and control your mind. And you and by approaching you and befriending with a hot girl, a handsome guy with so-called honey traps. Here's how you stop that from happening. Ignore all prolonged random encounters with strangers you don't know and be spontaneous. The same remote neural attack can be used to disrupt your speech if the attackers decide to prevent you from discussing a specific topic or repeating a given word. This system can configure to disrupt your recollection when formulating a related statement or inject gibberish when you're attempting to speak. The goal of the attacks appear to be threefold: censorship, memory management, and direct behavior control. These people are not concerned with legal constraints or any particular acceptable way of life. They simply use anything you enjoy, hate, or appreciate to abuse you regardless of your behavior. So if they give you a compliment, realize that they are only doing it to see how you will respond when they turn around to negate it and torture you nightly. You keep a constant handle on your state of activity as well as your sexual perception. You will recognize conflicting impulses, although it is possible for the system to overpower your impulses. If you understand the attacks, you'll be able to recognize the physical changes resulting from these powerful impulses, and this should prompt you to reevaluate your current state. Unless you have been tortured to near incoherency, you should be able to fight the system's influences. These remote neural attacks are most effective when you're stepping through sequenced tasks, so try to avoid zoning on your activities. How? By changing your actions and activities randomly and constantly at the speed of thought. Don't always plan out or think out your day, then itinerary if you don't have to. Just do it. Remote neural manipulation is accomplished via their system's ability to interpret your thoughts and is wholly dependent on its ability to predict and influence your reference choices or impulse sequencing during thought composition. The system maps pattern with impulse and identifiers and uses statistical data about your composition habits to predict how you would think or act as you begin to formulate thoughts or prepare to act. The system's ability to define and map these references in intelligibility depends on whether or not the system depends on your cooperation and the attacker's ability to make sense of what they see visually or what they can guess based on your past activity. Quenching. They will constantly run you through verification routine where the system probes you for a particular set of responses repeatedly in order to establish a pattern. If you're interacting and countering these probes, the operator will vary the routine and attempt to verify via different methods. Once the system verifies the selected responses, they will be used in the next wave of harassment routines. The process is endless, and you will see the effects clearly if you're consistently defeating the system. If you're not defeating the remote neural monitoring system, then you will not notice the effects. The way to defeat the remote neural monitoring system is by quenching. You quench remote neural monitor by interacting and countering their tactics. None of what these people are collecting could ever be used in a case against you. Every piece of information collected by their system can be considered falsified or fabricated because the system is designed to continuously provide suggestions according to data which has been previously collected about your current activity, and the accuracy of reference descriptions is extremely low since the attackers don't really care about truth, and the system will fabricate statements or imagery while they're abusing you. The fabrications are generally the result of misinterpretation of references and emotional indicators, as well as distortion of injection feedback, in addition to false entries added manually by the attackers as a result of their inability to understand what they're viewing or their malintent. There's no reliable way for the attackers to determine what is true, even if they try to apply their observations to the aforementioned indicators. An attempt to prove guilt with their system would be the equivalent to a cop dropping a gun at a crime scene and claiming it belonged to some individual who happened to be passing by, random and falsified. There's no legal application for this system or anything generated by it. They will only capture what they want to abuse you with, and when they decide to censor your thoughts, they will force you into abusive or incoherent thought pattern using the injection and blocking methods mentioned above. For example, when you experience sudden severe aggression and agitation, it's the perps, not you, and it is part of parcel of mind control. They injected those impulses. Remember, they want you to keep constantly thinking about them. You can limit and counter this effect by learning to read memory while blocking their system. However, it takes quite a bit of skill and self-awareness. This is known as redirection. Redirection is simple. When the remote neural monitoring attack happens and impulses and thoughts are introduced into your mind by strong urge, high-frequency attacks, or slight, low-frequency attacks, just change your thread of thought. This hinders integration completion between your brain and the remote neural monitoring system. You can do this by establishing what is known as working reference. The Bible says whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Philippians 4:8. You can thwart the remote neural monitoring attack by establishing a working reference each time they attempt to inject impulses and thoughts to your brain. This is done by recognizing something in life that makes you very happy and then refocusing or redirecting back to that happy experience each time you're attacked through remote neural monitoring. If you can do this each day, their attacks will simply be annoyance to you as you can work around it, but will still hinder performance tremendously as you will be forced to test and validate memory constantly. And the physical sensations of the systems radiating your brain will be both irritating and distracting. Note that these attacks can be performed successfully at lower intensity, and you may initially will only notice them if you are frequently being tested at higher intensities. Torture. Understanding the memory attacks, blocking your real memories, and injecting false memories are key because if you do not recognize modification of your active memory, the system will cause you to briefly lose time perception, which may be enough procedural, functional disorientation to influence you to respond to an injected impulse, forced speech, for example. It is possible for the system to influence you to speak unwillingly or at the very worst, without you knowing it. For example, if you're susceptible to the system's influences, you may not realize that it is frequently or constantly influencing you to make minor choices. These motivational impulses can also be used to influence you in a manner that will give you the desire to speak. And I emphasize desire because you need to understand that these impulses will only make you feel the urge at higher levels set by the attackers or basic motivation at baseline levels to perform the task it's influencing you to do. They will test you now in combination with the motivation to speak. The system uses past references to direct you. For example, your personal memory of turning to speak to your wife and associated impulse. And when you react to this influence, the system will block your working memory while streaming the desired output, which will result in you making one or more statements under the system's control. They will test you on this frequently with word substitution. If you can learn to control this in thought, then you can control it while speaking, but you must multitask constantly and to read memory. If you do not have a working reference to return to after the forced speech attack, it is possible you will have no recollection of making the statement. If you have a hard time understanding how remote neural monitoring works, just think of how a lie detector test works. In theory, remote neural monitoring functions in a similar manner to a lie detector by measuring physiological responses emitted by the body. In remote neural monitoring, it is those physiological responses emitted via electromagnetic impulses by the brain. As you learn to defeat the predicted capabilities of the system, quenching, redirection, multitasking, and spontaneity, Their attempts to restrict your reference choices will become increasingly evident, and you will begin to perceive what I will describe as function duality. It might also be described as a focal duality within your working memory. The PERP system's prediction error rate will dramatically increase, and its attempts to predict your thoughts and intentions will become humorous, if not simply annoying. Thought triggered attacks. Seeing the relationship between your memory references and the system output, which can be specific directed energy attack, an audible forced speech sequence, etc., is critical to understanding how to control ultimately defeated thought triggered attacks, in addition to preventing the attackers from deceiving you with cognitive magic tricks. You should be able to redirect the system formulation, collecting data by reading your mind, or prevent predictive integration, interpretation of data from injected thoughts and impulses altogether. But when you learn to stop integration, realize that the system will be waiting for completion and will probe you for a response. It will begin to inject again if you attempt to ignore it. So unless you have extremely high memory skill and have learned the quenching technique, redirection might be the easiest option. They will also abuse you in every way possible to convince you that they're in control, when you will be able to see clearly they are nothing more than idiots who need to spend more time studying the systems they are abusing people with. If the system's suggestions are not acceptable to you, and they won't be if you're consistently blocking and redirecting it, then this will result in you making a continuous effort to counter the imposition of thoughts and impulses while contrasting your working state to maintain active focus. Although by cooperating and allowing the system to interpret and define you daily may find the suggestions become more tolerable, as the system is designed to mimic your normal cognitive behavior. I would recommend not allowing this, as you will tend to more readily accept the system's influence, and the purpose of the system influencing you in this manner is to give the attackers the ability to restrict you at will and to allow them to deceive or manipulate you subconsciously. You can only counter these restrictions if you're able to contrast the system's influence from your own willful activity. Everyone who is here in V2K is being monitored in this manner and being influenced in this way as well. The phrases you are hearing should be related to information captured during the silent monitoring period, and will eventually be used as foundation for your endless verbal harassment. What they do is a game of deception and manipulation, nothing more. Do not accept nothing they say as truth, and do not acknowledge anything the system interrogates you about as truth. The system will take random bits of anything it captures through your senses and fabricate stories which they will use to harass and interrogate you, with no intention other than to distract you and torture you into submission. If you learn how to defeat your remote neural monitoring and thought process attacks, you can render your remote neural monitoring useless or manipulate it to your advantage. Your advantage would be to document and verify it's happening in a court of law. People who take a stand and try to oppose this evil are labeled as by our government as descendants and punished or summarily killed. Many are victimized by government by being forcibly and falsely misdiagnosed with a mental illness, so that they are not taken seriously, pushed to the margins of society, or altogether removed from society with their credibility destroyed, so no one will believe them. That is why they torture. That is why the torture is designed to be so brutal, precisely so no one will believe it's happening. Their whole lives are completely destroyed because somehow they became a threat to our Orwellian society. As bad as it is, it will only get worse. Mind control will soon permeate every facet of our society. They achieve this by decoding electromagnetic emissions of the brain into actual thought patterns. Once those patterns are identified, they are used in varied and repeated harassment and torture of the targeted individual. The mental images and the brain actions can be seen through this window into the soul. Images, sounds, and other sequences. Aromas can be encoded into the human brain. They do this with me a lot, engaging in situational and controversial scenarios designed to capture the attention of the targeted individual seeking verification, like yesterday afternoon and last night. These electromagnetic impulses are sent into the brain via impulse injections to trigger evoke potentials for the purpose of verification. This generates sounds, images, aromas via the neuronal circuits. Essentially, they have turned the brain into a visual and verbal and auditive communication system. For example, synthetic telepathy is the denomination of DARPA that uses an electronic brain-to-brain interface or brain-to-computer interface. Just by touching the arm of another person or shaking their hand, a CIA operative can communicate via synthetic telepathy to another operative without ever saying a word, as those neural circuits in the hands or arms travel same pathways to the brain. This takes special software and usually involves direct or remote contact with the human anatomy. It is very similar to cell phone technology, and basically through microwave towers, then onto the receiver. The receiver is located with pinpoint accuracy and tracked within a few feet of its actual location. However, the receiver is not a cell phone. It's the human mind. Right now, they're able to clone the human mind by downloading one's entire persona and psyche into a computer database. This technology is being used by British intelligence agencies known as inside M16 circles as Project Soulcatcher. This is achieved through transcranial stimulation via directed energy weapon radiation and bioelectric R&D. Basically, they map your brain, then tie you to a supercomputer which downloads your information back into a database and monitors all electromagnetic activity of your brain 24/7 for life until the day of your death. This transcranial brain stimulation is also used by the military with brain-to-computer interfaces such as those used by pilots with the new F-35 stealth aircraft. And I'm done with that, but that's how you beat remote neural monitoring, and that's a little information about remote neural monitoring. You might need to listen to it. I had to speak fast because my phone only downloads so much. I'm in Evergreen, Alabama right now. I'm enjoying life in the country. So anyway, I do need clothes and stuff. But anyway, that's another thing for another time. Y'all have a good day and be blessed. And you might need to listen to this over and over because I spoke it real fast. God bless y'all. Oh yeah, I still can't walk, but I'm making progress.